we host people that work in security and privacy systems to give talks online. And once a month, we have an event that is also focused on formal methods for security. This is one such event. And today, we have the pleasure to have here as the speaker, Pascal Lafourcade. Pascal is currently Associate Professor of Maître de Conférence in Clermont, Auvergne, which is in France. And before this, he was at different places doing always work in formal methods for security or applied cryptography. So he did a PhD at LSV in INS Cachan on formal verifications of cryptographic protocols. Then he spent some time in ETH in David Basin's group in Zurich, after which he was for a while in France at Verimag. And actually it is from 2013, if I'm not wrong, that he is in Clermont-Ferrand. And he's the industrial chair of the Digital Trust of Clermont-Ferrand in the lab called Demos. And without many more introductions, I won't say anything about his talk. He can introduce his talk. We welcome Pascal, and yeah, Pascal, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for the invitation. I'm very happy to be there. Please do not hesitate to ask questions during my talk or to open your mic and also interrupt me if you have something that is not clear or you want more precision. We are not obliged to wait until the end of the talk. So, okay. So today I will talk about security analysis of electronic exam, and this is joint work with many people. So almost all the affiliations are not correct anymore because people move or the name of the university may have changed or project or teams. So, but we did this bunch of work with Ali Kassem, who was my PhD student, Yannick Dreyer, who was my PhD student and now is in Nancy. Ilyes Falcon is a colleague in Grenoble, and Peter Ryan and Rosaro Giustolici and Gabriele Enzini are people working in Luxembourg. So let's go first and to say that the exams are not new, and in the education we can see in many representation in many places. So here you have a classroom in 1852 about schools. So, and many of you have already passed exams. So this is a very big, huge exam organized in France or a different country. And you can have many people attending the same exam. So this is what you are used to do, and this is traditional exam. So I think most of you have already passed some exam on a pen and paper in a big room during the day scholarship. But more new places, you can have e-exams, so meaning electronic exams. This is assisted by a computer, and you can see many people in front of the computer, either in the same room or either remotely, that try to solve exercise online. So this is what we call e-exam. So this is really a reality, and I think all of us have tried some kind of this. So this was before the COVID, many open courses, proposed certification and e-exam, so Coursera, edX, Udacity. But the other people who are very used to organize e-exam is people for teaching English, for instance. So there is a certification, or also certification for network like Cisco, CCNA. So these are online possible exam, and I think all of us during the COVID experience, we had to do some exam online. So it was a good point, and you all know that is not an easy task. So we'll see what are the challenges in this topic. So the main thread here is that the candidate can cheat. So maybe some of you already did it. So either you have a phone, either you have you want to copy on over your network shoulder. A neighbor shoulder, sorry, or otherwise you have a sheet of paper that is hidden somewhere, and you try to have more information. Another possibility for cheating is you can maybe try to pay the professor to have a good grade, or even better, to pay the university directly to have the diploma, and no need to pass any exam. So you can try to corrupt examiner or even more important person to have at the end your diploma. And so for try to have mitigation over this. Many services exist. Either you have an exam center. So in my university, some students pass online exam. So they have 1 hour in front of computer and they are all in the same room on a dedicated computer, and they all have a different access and just access to the subject, no access to internet. Some other solution exist online like ProctorU, where people are looking at you in front of a webcam and see that you are not cheating and just typing on your keyboard and not ask somebody else or have extra information. So these are very difficult and complex protocol for ensuring students are not cheating. But there are some scandals in the past. So first in Atlanta, where there was a public school cheating to increase the number of people in they just register fake candidate in order to have more money from the state or for the government. The same for Turkish public personal selection exam. People were selected without passing the exam. And even in UK, we have a problem with visa to pass some fake tests in order to increase the number of students in the university. So these are also important threat levels that could be exist. And this I stopped in 2015, but many other online or classical exam scandals have been show up during the last months and last year. So we want to talk about the security of e-exam. So let's see what it is and what I will talk about. I will talk mainly about these 3 papers that we wrote in 2014 and 15. So the first one is about security property and how to model them using a formal method to use automatic tool to make the verification. And I will go in the detail about authentication and privacy property. Another paper we did the year after is about verifiability. How can you verify that everything goes well for your exam? And we have individual and universal verifiability. And we also propose some monitoring for real exams. And so the idea is to see if we can detect in live some misbehavior about some person. So this is an overview about what we have done. And why I'm now interested a lot in this stuff, because we have a project, INR project between Luxembourg and a French university, which is called Severitas. So I put the link here. And from 2021, 2024, we'll continue and go deeper in the examination verification. So I will give you informally what we have improved already during the first year of the project. So let's go with the outline. After this short introduction, we go for the security, after the verifiability, and finally for the monitoring aspect. So let's go and talk about security. So first of all, I will define what we call an exam, and we have defined at least 3 different roles. Okay, of course, the candidate, people will pass the exam. After, you have the examination authority, who is organizing the exam, so registering a candidate, distributing the subject, controlling the candidate name and whatever. And you have the examiner who is designing and correcting the form fulfilled by the candidate. So these are the 3 roles that we need for an e-exam. Okay, and we distinguish 4 phases. The first is about the registration. So at least the candidate need to be registered to a lecture. You cannot have an exam for anybody. So you need to know who will pass the exam in order to have authentication and to have some control about the candidate. The second point is the examination. So is when candidates are going to the exam and answer questions proposed by the examiner. And the third phase is marking, where the examiner corrects what the candidate did, okay, the copies of the candidate. And finally, last phase is a notification to the candidate about the result of the examination. So this is the 4 phases that we distinguish in the e-exam setting. Okay, so we use applied p-calculus. We use also event. So more or less, we use Proverif to make this formal analysis. And we model authentication and privacy for different properties that we have designed. So this is a high-level presentation about what we have done. And I think Bruno Blanchet came to present to you some of his work. And so he's the author of Proverif, the formal method tools that we use for this study. Okay, so let's go for who model. How does it work? So the registration phase, there is an event which is put in the Proverif code when the exam authority register a candidate and validate the registration of the candidate. Now, for the examination, you have the question that are sent, and when the candidate submits the form that is fulfilled with the answer, he sends this to the examiner, and we raise a flag on the examination, on the candidate stuff, which is called submitted. And of course, when the administration receives it, say is accepted. So this is when the answers are sent to the examination authority. In the marking phase, we say that the copy of the candidate are sent to the examiner, and we say there is a distrib. And of course, when the examiner mark them and send them, we say that they are marked, so we make the grade and the examination. So we have the QR code who looks like for the number of the copy, because an examiner can have several different exams at the same time. And finally, when the exam authority sends the mark and the candidate receives it, we say that is notified by this. So these are just flags that we put in the exams modeling that we have in Proverif. So we need to put all these flags in order to be able to model the security properties that we want. So now the first property that we model is about authentication property. So first, we call it answer origination authentication. The idea is to be sure that the candidate proposes only one answer. And so what we want is there is for each accept event, there is a register person. So we want that register arrive always when you have an accept, meaning that only people who have registered can submit the exam. So this answer origin authentication. Now we have another stuff is form authorship. We want to be sure that the candidate send what is received for the examiner authority. So on every trace, we want that there is no modification between what is submitted and accepted between two candidates. There are another property that we design is what we call form authenticity, where this time you want to be sure that when an examiner have done a mark for a copy, it's sure that is something that has been accepted and sent to him. So distributed to the examiner and accepted on the examination authority. So this is how with this trace relation, we can formalize this form authenticity. Now we want the mark authenticity. So we want to have a link between when the candidate is notified and when is marked by the examiner and distributed from the exam authority. And for this, we check the link between the candidate name and the grade. So you can notice also in the mark, there is not the name of the candidate, and the link between the candidate and the mark are done by the exam authority. So this was the first simple property that we designed. Now we can go for privacy property. So for this, we're doing exactly like in the voting. We will use equivalence observational property to do. Okay. So question and distinguishability. So it's meaning that the candidate should not learn any information. So meaning between two exams from the outside, if you swap the question, there is no way that you can distinguish these two exams. So it's meaning the exams, the questions asked for the candidate are still undistinguishable. So there is no way to leak information. Of course, this is before the exam is distributed to the different candidates. Otherwise, once you have the exam, you have access to the questions, of course. Okay, and of course, this should be considered with honest and dishonest candidate and authorities. The next property is anonymous marking. Okay, so you don't want that there is a link between an answer and the candidate. So this time is exactly like in voting. And you should not be able to distinguish two answers from two candidates. Meaning, in one situation, the candidate in purple answer 1, and the green candidate answer 2 in the exam 1. If you have a different instance of the exam where they swap their answer from an outside point of view, nobody can distinguish the two situations. This is exactly like in voting, and you don't want that we can know for who you vote. And this is the same for the anonymous marking in the exam settings. Okay, and of course we have honest or dishonest examiner and authorities to make this property true. Okay, the next property is what we call anonymous examiner. This time you don't want that a candidate cannot know which examiner grades his copy. So it's meaning you don't know who is grading your copy, because if you know it, you can maybe pay the examiner to have a good grade, or I know, make a bad thing to him or to his family if you don't have the good grade. So for this is to preserve the integrity of the examiner. So this time you don't want that you can distinguish an answer and a mark between two examiners. So we use the same idea of swapping answer. No, we are swapping answer and mark. No, we want a mark privacy. So this time it's exactly the same as previously. For the same answer, you should not be distinguished the two marks, that to have the mark privacy. So the mark should be private from the people who receive them. Mark anonymity. So this time, sorry, I'm back. Yeah. So yeah, examinus and non-mark anonymity. So this time you swap the mark and keep the same answer. So more or less, we have all the possible combination with all this stuff, and each time we have a different property. So mark anonymity, mark privacy, and anonymous examiner. So these are 3 properties. Yeah. So once you have defined these properties, what you want to do is to see if they are good property or not, and you want to apply them on a real protocol. So we study ETSI and PETO protocol. So this is a protocol proposed in 2010. This uses ELGAMAL, reusable anonymous return channel, which is for anonymous communication, cryptographic techniques. They use secret shamers, and they use servers to de-anonymize a candidate after the exam with a secret share. The goal is to ensure authentication, privacy, and presence of dishonest candidate, examiner, and exam authority. So this is the worst scenario that you can consider. And they claim that they are secure. So what we did, we model this in Proverif according to the specification of the protocol, and we discover that you have no secrecy at all, and you have a flow on all the properties. So all the properties that we have designed have a flow. So we can find a very fast an attack in few seconds for all the property here, which are property about trace equivalences. And as soon as we go for observational equivalence, we have more times. And for mark anonymity, it took 1 hour and 50 minutes on a regular computer. So you see that this is not easy to design a good protocol, and we took one in the literature and we find flow. Okay, why it's so buggy, this protocol? More or less about the definition of RARC. So it's a reusable anonymous return channel, which has a bug and does not provide anonymity as we expected. And so with this property, all the attacks come from this flow in this component. So if we are able to fix it, maybe we can have better things, but usually when you break something in this field, you want to fix it, but here it was so complex that we were not able to fix, and we need to use a different property or different fix. So we also study Remark, a protocol that has been designed by people in the Luxembourg, and this time it's also used ELGAMAL encryption. It uses a mixnet, exponentiation minute, to have a pseudonym, and to mix the copy sent to the examination mark. A bit Like in the bulletin board, like in the voting setting, we also use the bulletin board here. And the idea here is to have privacy, integrity, verifiability, authentication, and of course, in presence of candidates, honest and dishonest, examiner and exam authorities, dishonest. So we found that all the proof were correct in Proverif in few minutes. Okay. And after a fix. So what it is, the one, because we found a small bug, we correct it and now it's correct. And for mark privacy, mark anonymity is implied by mark privacy formally. So if you have mark privacy, it's no need to check mark anonymity. So this is something, the relationship that we prove formally. So this concludes the first part of the talk about the security of properties. Now we were interested in a different property, which is verifiability. And I will start by the model for this. After we apply the verifiability on a great concrete exam, pen on paper in Grenoble. And after we did it for remark again. So what we need this time, we will define 4 sets for our abstract model. The abstract model are about candidates and registered candidate, which are a subset of candidate. Another subset is about question, and correct question are a subset of these questions. Of course, we have answer and marks. And we say that something it's accepted if there is a candidate and we have a question and an answer, and that everything match. Is it marked if you put a grade on the question for a candidate, and this is assigned a grade if the candidate receives it. Okay, and we have a function that is say correct. If you take an answer and a question, you say this is correct and give you the grade. Okay, so this is an abstract function. And we say that a protocol is X verifiable if you have sound and complete test for the X property. So it's meaning you have a test in the both sides to do this one. And this is what we are interested in. And we can define with this small notion about what we call individual verifiability. In voting, it's just the fact that you are sure that your vote has been taken into account in the result of the election. So now this time you want to verify that many properties about verifiability. The first one we define is something that is not clear and is never checked in voting, but we want to check it in e-exam, is what we call question validity. To be sure that you receive the question generated by the question committee. You don't receive a wrong question. So there is something. And so we say that the question verifiability for individual verifiability is equivalent that the question that you receive is in the state of the question that you have graded. And you have sound and complete if you have the equivalence between these two relationships. So in the same idea, we go for different properties. So mark correctness. So you want to be sure that the mark that you receive is correct. Okay. So for this, you use the correct function and you check that there is a relationship between the two. The second one is exam test integrity. And so you want to be sure that your answer was accepted and marked as it is submitted. So here we have different properties, a model which is a bit more complex. You have an equivalency between what you have submitted according to the log, if it's accepted, and if there is a mark that corresponds to your answer. The last one is exam test markedness. Here the answer was marked. Okay, you want to be sure that you have the grade and be marked to be sure to receive it. So this is a verifiable individual verifiability. We have more, I think, yeah, two more, mark integrity. So only the register mark is assigned by the examiner. So you want to be sure about that. And you want to be sure that you receive the assigned mark. So this is marked unification integrity. So it's kind of a duality between what is sent by the candidate and what is sent by the examiner to the candidate as well. So we have this formal model for individual verifiability. we go ahead and we want to have outside verifiability. So this side, the evidence should be some logs that are for outside auditors. So not for people who are playing the protocol, but for auditor. And the auditor should be sure that only accepted answers are submitted by the registered candidate. So this is, you examine the log and you want to be sure that all the candidates that you have been registered. The same for mark correctness. From the outside point of view, you want to be sure that all the grades are correct. So it's meaning they are part of the correct answer with the correct marking. So this is mark correctness. From outside point of view, again, an auditor can check that only accepted test answers were marked. You cannot mark people that didn't good register and answer wrong answer. All accepted test answers were marked. So this is exam test markedness. And the integrity, you want to be sure that the mark are only answer who has been collected and registered by the exam authority. So this is an extra property. So now we have modeled this on the formal point of view. So with a kind of equation, how do we translate them? So we decided to use formal models, and for this we use again Proverif. Because Proverif can do reachability state, we are able to do that. So for this, we took a case studies, which is Grenoble exams, and we decided to take pen and paper exams. So it's a Université Joseph Fourier at that time, and the goal is to have anonymous marking. And for this, what they are doing, you fulfill the date, the exam, the name, whatever. And on the right side, you put your number of candidate here. So you have a special number for each candidate, your name, and you sign this. And after you can, I don't know, glue it, because you can put some humidity on the border and you can move it together, like they can stick together and nobody can open it. So this is anonymous marking. You are correcting some exam that you don't know who wrote the exam. So this is what you have. And of course, the secretary has a correspondence in order to unanonymize. So they know the number of the candidate and I can check in which group there are at the end. So they open it and give the grade at the end. Okay. And this is, yes, I show it, it's open, and after when it's glue, how does it work? So you have it, and after you have this. Okay, so individual verifiability, we model them, and you make the assumption that the correct function is published after exam, and that the candidate can look at, they can see the copy they have written. And for soundness and completeness, we find some bugs. And I put in between brackets what we need to have an assumption. If exam authority is trusty, then you are sound, otherwise you are not sound. So we have some properties that require exam authority or examiner trust, meaning there are people that are not lying and behavior correctly. For mark correctness, everything is okay. And this is most important for students. So it's why they don't comply too much. Okay, so this is what we've done with Proverif model, formal model. We did the same for universal verifiability. We see that everything is complete, but for the soundness, we need some assumption, and we need to trust examiner or exam authority at the same time for some of the tests. Okay, and so this is what we observe from the Grenoble exam. So we wanted now to do for a cryptographic protocol. And so we analyzed remark again, because we already had a modeling of remark in the Proverif. So we just adapted and we introduced all the mechanism to do it automatically. And this time we see that everything is sound and complete without assumption, except question validity and mark correctness, where you need to trust exam authority. They need to be not corrupted. So this is what we have done, and this is the same thing for universal verifiability. Everything is fine, except mark correctness, where you need exam authority. So what it shows that we need some assumption on the trust of some parties of the e-exam in order to have some property like verifiability or universal and individual. So now I'm going to the last part of my talk and to see how can we detect some problems during the real exam. So for this, we go further and we decided to have a monitoring. Okay. How does it work? First, the model. So we want to have an event-based model during the exam session. So this time we put the register here, that the examination begins, that you get a question, you change the value of a question, of an answer, you submit, and this is accepted, and the end of the examination. So this is a flag that we need, and so meaning we put in the log all this information as soon as the event or the concrete action has been done during the software, whatever. So this requires a bit of work to instrument your code, and we'll see how we did it later on. Okay, after for the marking, you have the correct answer, evaluation of the marking, notification, assignation. So this is all the events that we need to model and to monitor the exams protocols to avoid some flow. Now, what are the properties for monitoring? What do you want to check? Because you will collect all this log in real time or a little bit later, and can you detect some problem? So for this, we use quantify event automaton, okay, with variable, finite state machine, and with some guard on the transition, okay. And we have also global variables. And the ID is the event are the parameters that you can put on the transition if needed. So let's say candidate eligibility. No answer is accepted from candidate unregistered. What you mean? We can represent this by an automaton. So you have the language here, which is alphabet sigma register I, all the people register, and there is a floor. Sorry, another event accept will contain I, Q, and A, question and answer. And what you want from going to one state to another state only if they have registered. Okay, and this is how you model it. And you can go to another state if they are accepted or not. So you can model this property with a small automaton. And with this, we are able to check the property. So this is how we do this candidate eligibility. So now you want to have auditability ability. So you can initiate and put some guard about some state in order to have a trace to have auditability. So it's exactly what you have done here, but here we want to collect and put in a state people who violated the stuff. So here you add people that are not registered and put accepted answer. So as soon as you have this, if you are registered, you are in a good set, but if you are not in a good set, you put in the F set where people are accepted but not registered. So this is a way to have more detect that there is a problem, but also to have a list of people who didn't respect the protocol. Okay, we did the same for unregistered candidate who can take an exam. So this candidate registration. We did the same for answer authentication. Only submitted answer should be considered. For accept candidate, we did the same, and question ordering. So you need to, in some exam, in the one we consider that you need to answer the exam in the specific order. So it's meaning you cannot answer question 2 if you didn't answer the questionnaire. Correctly or not, we don't care, but just want the order are the same. And you cannot jump or avoid one question. So this is question ordering, and we model it the same. We also model this for property, which is exam availability. You cannot accept an exam form after the deadline. So if the exam is over, you cannot take any new copy for any candidate. You can have a different flexibility in the starting time between the candidates, meaning every candidate has 2 hours, but one is starting at 10, and the next group will start at 12. So, okay. Of course, mark correctness, you want to be sure that the mark gives a good grade. So we have also an automaton for this. And you want only to accept answer was not marked, and the candidate was not assigned the corresponding mark. So we want to check the integrity of the mark also. So we did it, and after we make a model for UGF, so the Grenoble exam. So 2 weeks before the registration, people register. They have a login and a password. Okay, an examination is in a supervised room where students have the iPad, and they can answer only question in the fixed order. And as soon as they answer a question, they go to another question. Okay, they can change as many times as they want the question before they validate and send to the server. Okay, but once you are validated, you cannot go back to change your answer. This is a condition of e-exam at Université Joseph Fourier at this time. No, it's Université Grenoble. And this was exam for doctors in the last year of the internat to become a full professional in the medicine. And this is how the exam works. So many iPads has been distributed in a big amphitheater of 100 or 200 students, and everyone can play and follow this examination. So marking specification is a multiple choice question, so it's super easy. Okay. Okay, it's not by default. If it's not confirmed, it's not validated. Thanks, Roberto, for your question, but this is the rules of this medicine exam. So if you didn't validate it, the question is not taken into account. Okay, and every question is either 0 or 1. Okay, and of course you make the sum and attribute the global sum of each candidate to know how much they have, and the marks are notified to the candidates. So this is what we have. So you use a MarkQ, which is a tool for that, and we have the log that I presented previously, and we've analyzed this for properties. So answer authentication, all accepted answers are submitted by the candidate. You accept the answer again, but you cannot, different answers are not accepted. Answer authentication reporting, everything that is in F should more than one answer accepted. So we check that the auditing was correct because it could have a problem or a bug in the software. With our error answer editing, each candidate cannot change after a question is validated, so an answer is validated. So this is important because we didn't notice this new property. So the 5 properties I'm describing now were not imagined before, but once we have discussed with people and we see the answer, we say we should say check it, because can you modify after? No, it should not be correct. Question ordering: a candidate cannot answer a future question before answering all the previous one. And we thought that it was not possible, but indeed, we'll see in the future that some bug appears. And acceptance order: if you don't validate it, you can skip some questions. So you can decide to not to answer question and to jump to the next one. So now we have 4 property before plus 5 news. We have 9 property. So we got the log for a real exam, about 233 students. We have more than 4,000 events, and we apply our computation on this fix. You can see that everything is going fast, and surprisingly, we got flaws. So answer authentication were not correct. So we find an answer from a candidate that were not registered in the log. So there was a problem here. Answer the authentication reporting to, and question ordering. So it's meaning question ordering, a guy were able to answer question 3 before question 2, which is not allowed by the rule of the game. So we see that there was a problem. So of course, we inform the person who were designing the exam, and he investigated and were able to correct this bug. But without this analysis, he will say, oh, this is not possible. All the properties are satisfied, but it's not the case, and we show to them that we had a problem. For the second exam, we detect answer editing problem also. So somebody changed his answer after he has checked that it's validated. So this one for a second exam where we had the log for this one. Okay, this leads me to the conclusion of my talk, and to say that we had model for formal security and for verifiability also. We did real exam with monitorings, and we model a real exam and e-exam, and we identify some flow sometime. Of course, all the approaches are a bit different. Some are for secrecy, some are for verifiability, and the last one is for monitoring. So we need security and auditing at each step of the protocol. So at the design before publishing, and during also the execution thanks to the monitoring. So last message that I want to say, designing secure protocol is difficult, and formal method can help you to this. So please use formal method. What is the next is what we have done, and we are currently trying to solve in the Severitas problem with people in Luxembourg, Nancy, and Grenoble. We want to analyze more protocols. We want to have more properties, maybe to put some monitoring in live, to have more expressiveness in the property, and maybe to try to have an automatic translation between verifiability to monitoring. And other properties that we want to do is maybe to have a property for detecting cheating between the students, which might be possible. If you have some precise log, why not saying that this guy always answers the same answer that his neighbors, because you have the location of the people in the log, and you know that this guy is always late according to the other one. He's not saying that he's cheating 100%, because if everybody answer correctly, is maybe not cheating, but just they are clever, both of them. But if one answer wrong, maybe you might have a suspicion that they are not answering correctly, but just copying what the other guy is doing. So thanks for your attention. I hope you were interested in this, and I'm ready to answer your question if you have any.
All right, thank you, Pascal, for a very interesting talk with many details of how to verify different aspects of electronic exams. Any questions? Okay, I shall start with a question. So if you go to your previous slide, not this last one, but the one before this, yes, you say about detecting collusion in students. Yeah. So, okay, I believe that this is very important for a property that is present in exams and less so in electronic, well, there's coercion in electronic voting. Okay, so less so in other protocols. And I wonder if you have any already any ideas, any avenues of how you're going to model and verify collusion in this setting.
Okay, so our idea is to have temporal properties to see this, and another idea is also to work on the design of the protocol, because if students they all have different questions, or maybe the order of the question are not the same, it will be very difficult to cheat. Okay, so imagine if you have because it's also an advantage if you are answering as I show here. Using an iPad, you can imagine that you have maybe 100 questions, but Joanna receives the question in one order and I receive in a different order. So if I am cheating, I should maybe not able to copy what she is doing because it's not answering the same question. Also with the iPad, you can have the location. You can know that I am close to this person and this person. So you can see at which distance I can see. the stuff. So many things can be done on the protocol to prove that you cannot cheat in it. And so we can maybe put in place some methods that check that it's not possible to cheat, even if you have a super powerful vision in the real life. So this is something that we want to try to do, but it's big challenges. For this, we also have a kind of human science people in the project that are analyzing if this is there is some, I don't know how to say, not incentive, but if people, you say, if you are cheating, you go to jail, you need to pay something, what is the influence of this about cheating? So we put some fake exam to see how this disclaimer or this, I know, caution that we are taking have an impact or not. Okay, and so the idea is to put some question, very difficult question, but if you Google the question, you find immediately an answer on a different website where you have the answer of the question you're asking. And you are monitoring if people are going to the website to collect this question, this answer, and to answer the wrong question, the wrong answer to your question to the form, because they just copy paste. And we have some experiments like that that has been led by the socially human people.
Okay, thank you for your question, for your answer. I think that this is a lot about design of the protocol and detection of cheating, but less so about how to model the property. But I think that I understand, and we can also continue this offline, because I noticed that there's another question, so I don't want to monopolize the conversation on this. I'll hand over to Steve Schneider, who has a question, and then we can discuss later.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for your talk. I enjoyed it. I had a question actually related to what you've just been talking about. So one of the things we do is have a kind of question pool, so students don't get the same question. They get, you know, one from a pool of similar questions on a topic, and we also randomize the order in which they get given their question. So one thing about the fact that they may get different questions and to do with the modeling is how that related to a question indistinguishability, I think you called it early on. I didn't. So would the modeling become more difficult if you were looking at those kind of mechanisms?
So the question on distinguishability is the fact that before that the student are going to the exam, you cannot distinguish the question. It's meaning like you cannot know what will be sent to the student to answer. So it's kind of a big privacy property.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, so this is something you want, because if a student can collect all the possible questions, they will for sure learn before very well, and they maybe answer correctly. So this is at this stage. I think I understand also that you want this later on, and of course, this is a new paradigm in this e-exam comparing to voting, is that we have kind of conditional property. The questions should be secret on distinguishability until a point. After, it's not true anymore. So we have kind of, it's true for one or two phases, and after it's not be true anymore, because you reveal the question are public, everyone can check if it's wrong or not, you reveal the answer, and so on. So we have this kind of properties that we want to model also in our new project. I don't know if I answer your question correctly, Steve.
Yeah, no, I've understood now. Yeah, you've clarified something that I hadn't picked up. So yeah, I can see it's tricky.
Okay.
Also, I noticed that, well, there's another hand up. There's also a question in the chat. I'll hand back to Joanna as chair, but just to bring that to your attention as well.
Question for the end. What would be a problem accepting the last unconfirmed answer by default? So this really depends about the exams. You can say that, yes, we accept the last question and confirm as an exam, and we need to change a bit the monitoring aspect. So we need to have a different automaton, but this could be possible for the monitoring phases. And for the other, I think is not possible because we put an event on the model of Proverif each time someone is doing something. So if you don't send it, we don't model the event. So I think it will not be possible on the Proverif side, but on the monitoring side, it's totally possible.
Okay. All right, there's a question from Sia.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. I might be missing something very simple here, but if I remember correctly, you had like mark correctness property. You defined a function called correct, I think, if I remember correctly.
It was in the verifiability part.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking that question is if you're not considering, let's say multiple choice questions, that there is a fixed answer. The reason you would need a marker is because the marker needs to use his human or her human judgment to mark, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we have a well-defined function, which is the correctness of marking, we wouldn't need the marker anymore, right? Because we can just run that as an algorithm on every answer, right? If we need the marker to be in this sort of ecosystem, this means that there is we cannot have that sort of well-defined marking sort of function, right? So in that case, I guess verifiability, that defining a sort of verifiability becomes very difficult, right? Because the way you do it in real life is that you ask, other markers to mark the same thing, and then they check if they give you the same mark or not, right? Yeah, I was wondering how you are handling that. It's
okay. So in this model, what we did, we exactly as you said, we have a perfect function that you give an answer, you give a question, and give you if it's true or false.
Sure.
So you have the perfect function. And in reality, it's not so clear, when you have correcting, it depends about, I know, maybe your mood, it depends about many parameters, and yes, so this will be a bit problematic. So for this aspect, I think we might, and this is what happened in practice, and I don't know how to model it in electronic exam, but in practice, what we offer in the university, so we say, okay, students who are not happy with the grade they have, they can come and complain.
Yeah.
And they come and complain, and maybe it's not me, I'm not the corrector in front of him, but somebody open and show where is true or where is false. And so with this, the student can say, yes, true, I'm happy, or I'm not happy, and can ask for a double correcting. Okay, so you can ask for someone else who can correct the exam for a second time. And so this could be a kind of possibilities, but to model it is a bit more difficult.
Yeah.
And this is part of the new project that you want to do. How can we take into account all this human aspect? Sure. And so we have two approaches for that. We have the formal methods that will try to reflect the reality, but we have another aspect to see what is acceptable for the human, for candidates. Do this procedure is correct or not? So we have a human specialist in Luxembourg who can just make experiment with fake test or whatever to see what is acceptable, and after we can maybe draft to a model of what they design.
Sure. From a thanks for the answer. Yeah. So from the modeling perspective, if you see what I'm saying, if you have this perfect function correct, then you don't need a marker, right?
Yes and no.
Well, the marker can be an algorithm. Okay, I understand. Okay, right. All right. But okay, so I see. Okay, so yeah, I got it. Right. Thanks.
Yeah. The marker is an algorithm. Exactly.
Sure.
I have one last question, unless others will have another question. And this is, okay, this is very nice. And a lot of the properties and the modeling seem close to electronic voting. Some are not, but, and so we use this Proverif, which is in the Dole-Leviau model. But maybe you said this and I missed it. Does it really make sense to have a full Dole-Leviau model in here? Or will it really make sense to have a simpler attacker model, maybe not even use Proverif, but some other tools for distributed systems, and have therefore more complicated properties, for example, those for collusion, verified in there, but in a simpler threat model? Because really, okay, so in terms of the network traffic and so on, you probably do not need the Dole-Leviau model, but you need stronger threats such as collusion for the students. So did you consider any of this?
Yes, this is something that we have in mind because, you know, Stephanie Delon did something similar to have intruder in wireless communication. Because you cannot say this is Dole-Leviau controlling all the wireless communication. Maybe you can have a local intruder. You have a local intruder that can maybe affect 2 or 3 students. We are neighbor students and no far away. So this will be a possibility to detect and to see if this limited intruder can attack or not. And if we consider that, okay, one student can see maybe 1, 2, 3 meters, and you say the intruder can just see this limited number of other persons. So this might be possible. It's not easy to do, but this is something that we want to try, to have a limited intruder to maybe see if it's helpful. Because if you have a powerful intruder, maybe it's too powerful and can do many things.
But also if you have a very powerful intruder, but you declare a lot of, for example, private channels. So you have Dole-Leviau attacker, but in your Proverif model, you declare a lot of private channels. Then your proofs for example, if equivalence, observation equivalence will be very hard to do. So then it begs the question where you want quantitative things, you want collusion to move to a model checker that can do that, something like Prism, for example, but check out the Dole-Leviau aspect. So have it in a almost like a secure environment, but verify other properties that are much more expressive, where that would make sense. It's just an idea.
Maybe for quantification, qualitative property, you will need to use a different approach.
But also for collusion, right? Because for collusion, then you can express things that have this group of students and this other group of students, and this group of students are in some sort of collusion. They communicate amongst themselves, and these do not. And so verifying things in the presence of collusion, but not in a Dole-Leviau tool, but in another tool that doesn't have a Dole-Leviau model, but allows you to verify that. Just an idea.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it could be a good idea. If you have any idea, I will be happy to discuss with you when you come or when I come, because we have a PhD student who is working full time on this. So she started 4 months ago, just before summer. So yeah, we would like to do something like that.
Okay, well, we shall see. Well, anyone who has any questions or further observations to Pascal, you can find his email in my emails that I sent to you. And if not, with this, we thank Pascal. And we see you all in the next meetings.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.